And it's time for AM Business. And the incoming MPP government is expected to introduce reforms in the trade and industry sectors to drive the industrialization agenda of the country. And these include the establishment of an industrial development fund, the introduction of tax credit, as well as the reduction of corporate taxes and some import duties, among others. Well, all these are contained in the manifesto. Enjoy Business is exploring the policies the new government is likely to pursue to boost trade and industrial development. Well, in order for us to do that, we have to mainstream discussions in better perspective. And so we decided to invite the President for the AGI, the Chief Executive for the AGI, and Stephen Amwa is also a member of the MPP's communication team. He's also an expert in finance in his own right. But the CEO for the AGI is Seth Chum Akwaba. He's also here. Thanks for joining me, Seth.
Thank you.
And Stephen, you also. It's been a while. Okay. But let me ask you foremostly. We know that during the electioneering, the campaign team went to meet the AGI, met various subgroups as far as trade and industry was concerned, and the rest of the private sector and the economy is. What really pair your manifesto and the implementation of those contents of the manifesto would be the industrialization agenda of the Nanado-led government?
The last bit of what he said, what will be the industrialization agenda? I think we need to understand the basic platform on which the New Patriotic Party's fraternity was established. Per our ideology, which of course now it is the most acceptable approach by most governments in the world. We are capitalists, and as capitalists we adopt expansionary fiscal policies, meaning we don't overburden the private sector with taxes so that they can grow, expand, and then employ more people to ensure labor force and productivity. Of course, everywhere in the world, for long-term economic growth and stability, two key factors are labor force and then productivity. So we rather make life flexible for the private sector to operate. We give them huge margins in terms of their freedom to expand and grow, in terms of incentives, in terms of our policies that will favor them. So that is basically what we are. But then you realize that because of the dynamic nature of the environment all over the world, that's why they say, oh, left, center, right, this. You try to move forward a bit when there are other specific issues that, especially in a developing country, to embark on pro-poor policies. But then basically, because of that ideology that we have, anytime we are in government, we seem to be doing so much well with the private sector. I'm not saying perfectly well. And that is why we think when we come, AGI and co probably will be happier with us. I'm not saying we are going to provide them heavens. And all these things come as a result of our tax policies, how we manage the monetary policies, and then probably how we relate to them in terms of providing guarantees and other things and making sure that the environment is conducive for them to do their businesses. So in summary, of course, anything that will impede or become obstacle to the growth of the private sector, we try to remove them or reduce them. And that is what we do practically as a party. And you know we have what it takes to do in terms of human resources, in terms of capacity. We have a proven record. We did it before. And this time we're going to do it better because, of course, we've learned a lot of lessons. I think we are much more experienced now. And per what Nanado wants to do about our industrialization, because we are private sector, central government is not going to actually get practically wholly involved. Probably there could be partnership because of technicalities. Or we seek funds for them or provide guarantees for them to get funds and also make sure that a lot of factories. We have the resources. As a nation, the capacity is there. I mean, regional capacity. Ghana, basically, we have our 3 zones. Forest zone, savanna, semi-savanna. And each area, you can have more than 10 different crops, which are, I mean, and of course, you can add secondary value by getting a lot of products from these produce. Apart from that, we have not. We have gold minerals, from northern to southern part of Ghana, and all these we can add secondary value. The third thing is the Human Development Index in Ghana is very high. So we don't see why, personally, I don't see why we sit down to allow the private sector to collapse when they can be actually supported by the government to make sure that they grow and expand. And also government policies, i.e. Interest rates, because the interest rate definitely is affected by the policy rate. Now it's around 26%. I don't know whether last week, I haven't been following because of the election for the past 3 weeks, but it was really, really high. The whole world was second or first. And all these things will be looked at. I mean, importation taxes around 50%. And because of the GUTA, Ghana Union, I think Trade Association or whatever, they shut their
Traders
Association. They shut their whatever shops for weeks. Sorry, my voice, because of the election.
Yes, I know.
So
you're forgiven.
So all these things were really impeding every cost variable in terms of doing business in Ghana, was giving them adverse. And this is where we are going to review and make sure that businesses will expand, will grow, and then they will have the opportunity to employ a lot of people. And by doing that, of course, our economy will be stable. That's what we want to do.
So now let's watch the president-elect, before the election, at the time of the manifesto launch of the party, and what he said about the sector we're talking about.
Tell the young people and the students about the skill training program. Tell them there will be opportunities for all. Tell the farmers they will not be left to their own, and will be given the support to making farming the profitable and fulfilling business it should be. Tell the business entrepreneurs that their tax burden will be reduced and their business will flourish so they can create jobs.
And the president-elect, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Now, Seth, and you with AGI, let's put all these things into perspective. If you look at the current environment, what really are the challenges then there are, so that if we want to embark on this very industrialization drive, we know that these are the sort of things that we need to resolve before we even start or embark on?
Well, thank you. I think the very first issue you need to tackle is macroeconomic stability. I think this year we've had reasonable level of stability, but is it sustainable? Because the previous years we've had challenges in the macroeconomic environment. So it's very important that for you to do anything serious, you need to have a stable macroeconomic environment. And here we mean the key indicators of the macro environment. That is the interest rate. It has to be within reasonable range. Inflation has to be predictable and within reasonable range. Exchange rate, regime, and all that. You need to have all these fundamentals right. You see, businesses strive on being able to predict the environment. Investment is based on predictability of the environment. If you can't predict, you can't do any investment. So that's the first thing you need to really have it right. But we also know that these are not things that you can fix artificially. You need to have the fundamentals of the economy right. For example, if the productive sector is not performing, and then you try to reduce interest rates, it's not going to work, because in the end you will still import and the inflation will come in, imported inflation will come in, and so on. So you need to have the economic fundamentals right. Another area you really need to look at if you're talking industrialization, and I'm happy he's talking so much about new initiatives, reforms that they will bring and all that. It is good. For private sector, it's not about talk, it's about what is practically possible and what is reality on the ground. A key area that we really need to look at is energy. Today, energy is a major challenge to industry. And last year and last 2 years, we've had challenges with the supply itself. This year, we've had reasonable stability, but the cost is so high, so we are uncompetitive. If you're comparing to other countries, competing countries, how much they are paying for energy, that's not what we are paying here. We are paying way above that. And we shouldn't be comparing ourselves into the West African neighbors. We should compare ourselves to countries that are actually flooding our markets with their products. And therefore, we need to be competitive on the energy front. How do you do that? well, maybe they would throw more light on how they plan to do it. But definitely, if you are not efficient in your energy delivery, right from production, transmission, and distribution, you can't reduce the energy cost. And then the kind of power source you have is also a major determining factor. So you have to go into all this and make sure that in the end, industries are getting reasonably cheaper, competitive price of power to stay in business. The other thing you need to look at is also the tax regime. We've talked a lot about it, and in particular this year, we've had lots of taxes being introduced. So you need to look at the whole tax environment and do some reforms in the regime. For industries, one key factor of production is raw materials. You pay, and you know, a lot of the raw materials we use in this country are imported because we are not producing so much. And therefore, if you are importing the raw materials and you are paying taxes on raw materials, then right from the onset, and don't bear in mind that cost of capital is also very high. I'll come to that. But then you are using high cost of capital to import the raw material, and you are paying tax on the raw materials. It doesn't help production. So that's something AJ has been talking about all the time. I was excited to hear that MPP intends to take out the 5% duty on raw materials. We will see how it's going to play out, but that is very important. And then not just the taxes, but also look at the whole regime of raw material supply. For the agro businesses, agro processing companies, you need to have a strong linkage between industry and agriculture to produce the kind of raw materials you need to supply industry. If you're saying you're going to have industries around the country in various districts and regions and all that, industries cannot work without the raw material supply. And it just doesn't have to be one-off supply. It has to be regular, consistent, and reliable, and the volumes that you need to be able to keep the industry running. Otherwise, because the industries have to be operated on a self-sufficient basis, it can't continue receiving government largesse and survive. No, it has to be competitive. And to be competitive, you need to have a very strong base raw material supply. That's for the agribusiness bit. And then the ones that we are importing have a more flexible regime of getting raw material into the system, and then you can be sure that industry can produce. So these are some of the things. Of course, technology has to be looked at. We are still using a bit of, our technology level is not that high, and probably because the capital to acquire it is a challenge. So capital is a major issue. And today we have a lot of banks in Ghana, so we are all excited about it. But the actual situation is that when it comes to medium to long-term funding, it's virtually lacking. And people are using short-term capital to do long-term business. And you are borrowing at 34% and importing machines. How long does it take to get the machines into the country? How long does it take to fix it and try it, test run, and then start production? For 6 months, 1 year, you are not ready. And if you are borrowing at 34%, by the time you start production, you're already in debt. So you can't do long-term investment with the kind of capital we have. So it's another major area that we need to look at. How do we get access to cheaper source of capital on a long-term basis and on competitive rates? So these are some of the reforms that have to be looked at.
And adequately it's been spelled out. Now, it's made our businesses not competitive over the last few years. But more importantly is the fact that we also have to situate our situation within the world trade order and the geopolitics of the world. So if we're doing all that, knowing that we have an environment in which we have an influx of a lot more imported materials, and then our industries are also not competitive because of the regimes we have in terms of what the level of indicators are and how they can get access, how does government go about it in such a way that you give some level of assurance that timelines are also available, and then there's that respite for the industry?
Raymond, I think we need to get this thing clear. Ghana, we always just concentrate on the systematic risk factors alone. And that is doing us a great deal of harm, i.e. the macroeconomic indicators, government positions, and stuff like that.
But they are important.
Very, very. In fact, they are even more important.
They give you great indications as to whether.
I mean, I'm not saying that, but we also always don't include the unsystematic risk factors, the company-specific risk factors. Trust me, government can provide all the capital they need or help them to acquire the capital, reduce taxes, reduce interest rate, make business so easy to actually go by. Yet a lot of companies will collapse. How many companies owned by Ghanaians after Kwame Nkrumah are still existing? Of course, government leadership performances might have affected them. But I can tell you, I've done a few works for some companies. As become a company, basically we do investment consultancy. Right from those who play interface roles, from the watchman to the manager, most companies in Ghana, they don't run them professionally. They can't separate ownership from control. They don't even have annual budgets. They don't review their budgets. There's so many issues. So apart from the fact that, yes, a government may want to do so many things
and create an
to
environment,
them, they themselves should also be prepared and be competitive. But coming back to the main issues, talking about taxes, everything that my brother said, I agree with him, most of the things he said. One of the areas that he said, I think I have a different opinion is, when productivity is down or we are not, whatever, we are not being productive, you don't have to reduce interest rate. That one, technically, I don't think so. Interest rate reduction from the government side is about the approach to stabilizing the economy by arresting inflationary rate. And it comes depending on what is actually causing inflation in our system. For instance, as I said, a few weeks now or months now, because of the election, I don't follow issues. But Ghana here, for the past 1-2 years, the inflation that we are having is cost pushed. I mean, cost of production is actually, it's not demand pull. In which case, you don't have to increase policy rate. You either maintain or try to bring it down, use other alternatives to help the private sector. But we're increasing it. In fact, your former station, sorry mentioning here, I had an encounter with Bank of Ghana guys for 3 different occasions. When interest rate was below even 14%, they argued and it went to about 19%. So the fact is, it depends on the government policy direction when it comes to some of these things. So if we will say, we are saying that we'll manage it effectively, it doesn't mean we are perfect, but I think we understand the dynamics of some of these things. And we'll go by. Talking about taxes, we have said emphatically that taxes on imported raw materials are either drastically going to be removed or reduced. And we mean it because we want to encourage production so that there will be employment in our country. And he cited that one as one of their major difficulties, which I agree with him. So we'll do everything within our capability to ensure that our jurisdiction, to ensure that the private sector for the first time will have opportunity to grow. But then, as I said, what are they also doing? How many medium-term to medium-sized or large-sized companies owned by Ghanaians have proper finance people? Most of them have, I'm not heaping scorn on other professions, but most of them have DBS, account, some they haven't even finished, and they think accountant makes financial decisions. They provide data, and then finance people will make finance decisions and advise appropriately. How many businesses in Ghana here, before they venture into an area, embark on the appropriate investment appraisals to know that this is where I'm heading towards. These are the possible risk factors. This is the human resource I need in terms of skills. We don't do all this. So as much as we are blaming government.
Somebody say you've started giving the excuses already, but
right? No. Yeah. What he's saying, I agree, but I'm saying that we shouldn't look at the aspect. It's like your dad paying everything for you to go to school, and you go to school and you don't study.
Yes.
That doesn't also mean all entrepreneurs or investors or companies in Ghana owned by no, but most of them don't survive the test of time. Not only because of government inability to manage these, we call them policy boundaries factors, well, but they themselves also do not.
Okay, can I make a comment? Okay.
I know you want to make a comment, so please.
Yeah, I want to make a comment, a bit of reaction to what he said.
Not necessarily a reaction, it's a discussion.
There's a discussion.
Because we're trying to have the discussion because we have to be realistic.
Exactly, we have to be realistic.
The campaign has gone, but we have to face the realities as they are.
Yeah. Now, I just want to, whilst agreeing with him that some businesses are not managed
as far as the
structures are. But you should understand the background to how businesses or entrepreneurship is developed in the country and everywhere else, and especially in our part of the world. When you start business, You start as a small, in most cases that's what happens. You start with your own equity, you start as a small enterprise, sometimes you start from a garage, from your house, something like that. So you are the manager, you are the accountant, you are everything. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that because that is the capacity you have at the time. Then when you are growing, the business should be able to know what point in the business life you should bring in professionals to manage aspects of the business. So maybe at the beginning you employ a marketing person who will do the business with you. As you grow, when it comes to your books, you may not even need to have a professional accountant in-house. You can use the professional service of others to prepare your books for you
By
and
outsourcing,
by outsourcing and gradually grow it. When you become very big, then you bring in professionals to sit in the business and then help grow the business. That's where you have departments and so on and so forth. So that is how businesses grow. At the beginning, you can't have all the structures that you are talking of. I agree that as an entrepreneur, as a business person, right from the onset, you should have that horizon. You should have that focus.
Remember, I talk about medium, large size.
So at some point, you have this challenge. But as you grow, I agree, you need to have this structure. Otherwise, you can't run business.
What currently is the state? Because what he's saying, and based on my own observation, is also a reflection of how, even so to speak, the first-rate companies or the big-size companies sometimes are run. We are not able to do the distinction between ownership, okay,
and control,
and making sure that you implement the right structures, the right systems that would ensure that the business is on a sound footing, and that's what he says controls.
I agree with that to some extent. There are a lot of businesses that have good structures, are doing very well in terms of management, but because of the macroeconomic environment, they still struggle.
Yeah.
So look at it from that angle. I said. So it's difficult to tell what is actually the main cause of a downfall of a company. So you need to be able to distinguish.
Earlier in your submission, yeah, you made a point about quality and how competitive you can also be based on the influx of imports, and how at the end of the day it makes you lose the market share that you have, even if you have at all. Realistically, you look at the current state of doing business in Ghana. How competitive can a business be if the various variables are normalized in such a way that you can also undertake your business?
No, we can. You can be competitive if the environment is good. Reason being that the imports that are coming in, first of all, they are being transported. They are going through a process. A lot of them will also pay import duty and all that. So their cost of doing business should be higher than you who is producing within the local environment. And therefore, if all things are equal, then your cost at the end of the day should be cheaper than the imported product. And therefore, if the conditions are good and you are competitive and the environment is good, you can be competitive. The other thing is that there are some products that are peculiar to our environment. Typical agro-processing products. If you are producing large volumes, the kind of agricultural products we need, and you are feeding industry with it, then it means that you can be competitive. Then if you also sort out this energy issue, and our energy cost is comparable to elsewhere, I mean, the countries that are importing to your country, then it means cost-wise you are managing it. So in that case, you can be competitive. Of course, I will also add, and I agree, that the efficiency of management is also key. And then if you get that right, why can't you be competitive? There are certain products that you must, as a matter of fact, produce it in your country and consume in your country. If you can't do that, then you can't be competitive in any environment. So certain basic products are critical for your local production and local consumption before you think of export, before you think of imports. Those ones must be clearly demarcated and targeted.
If we want companies to take advantage or industry to take advantage of the local markets before we even think of satisfying the global market, what incentives will be provided? In other countries, they have special purpose vehicles. They have hubs that tend to provide the needed assistance to businesses, make sure that they facilitate access to credit, etc. And we're hoping that also will be done. What will be the intention of the NPP-led government?
I think the first two factors I raised are tax policies, interest rates are one. Are two issues I raised. And I think the tax exemption raw materials, because if you're locally based entrepreneur or businessman or investor, and then you're importing raw materials for your production and you're not paying taxes on them, it will increase your margin. And then also under MPP this time, we'll make sure that the Food and Drug Board and the Standard Authority are probably giving the needed, not probably, are going to be giving the needed support. Because you know one of the challenges that we are having, sometimes they can even produce enough to export, but they don't meet the international standard. For instance, I have a palm plantation. This year I want to start production. So I had some services from Kade people to come and train some of my workers. And I realized that we cannot export most of the times our palm oil simply because of the high level of FFA, free fatty acids, and moisture. They don't meet the international standard. So sometimes even the technical know-how, and it's one of the areas I think our government will also try to work or collaborate with the Ghanaian entrepreneurs or manufacturers to make sure that the things even that we are not only for local consumption, even for local consumption, they should meet the international standard, because FFA controls most of the terminal diseases that we are having. So there will be a lot of collaborations between the government and the local entrepreneurs. And apart from the tax policies and other macroeconomic policies that will help them, I think we need to come closer. And then the banks too. Look, my PhD research area is a very interesting one. I pray that I can finish probably next year. And then if the nation will come in agreement with me. Do you know that I think Ghana, for now, I'm yet to find other countries, is the only country that I have come across. I'm trying to, maybe I'll travel to a few African countries and find out that treasury bills are giving returns more than private securities. And then the AGI and co, with all respect to them, are staying aloof.
What can they do? There's a limitation.
No, let me tell you something. The government securities are deemed risk-free. And then they had the risk, they had the expected return. So if I have 1 million cedis as an investor, and I invest with the government or in a government security, if I get like 20%, if I invest in any other bank security, I should get more than 20%. But because sometimes even the AGI themselves, not only AGI, the Ghanaian business community, in my opinion, they don't really bite. They don't really have the cohesion. You understand what I'm saying? Or sometimes it still also comes back to the management. If they are one and they are together and they also fight for their right, because they go for loans and now it's around 40%, and they invest with you and you give them something less than the risk-free assets, which is not done anywhere in the world. And it means banks, this is not only under NDC or whatever, but it means banks are being overvalued in our country today. It also means by extension, our GDP all the time is not the real value or figure. Probably because we also don't take into consideration mad households in the villages. Probably they will compensate for that practically. But the fact is that apart from government being expected to get closer and help private businesses, they should move to also another level. There should be a paradigm shift. They should be ready to spend. You know, most businessmen have capitalization or capital around 20 million Ghana cedi, $20 million, bigger than some of the investors outside. But when you talk to them, sorry, let me speak this vernacular. What do you mean? So, somebody with probably certain finance and management expertise, even 5,000 a month, you will not pay. So, the slightest turbulence, the business collapses. You understand what I'm saying? So, of course, the major problem is what he said, the macroeconomic indicators or management by leaders or government, NDC and PPS. But they themselves, even as a body, I don't see them pushing for what they deserve most. You understand what I'm saying?
You go to other countries, and I know you want to, the state and its apparatus provide the impetus and the incentive for businesses to thrive. And you come to our country and the rest of the developing countries in Africa, liquidity and especially equity of various businesses are in the hands of, so to speak, foreign direct investors. Okay. Now, at the end of the day, once they control liquidity, it will be expensive as it is. When at a point in time in the financial year there's an influx, or perhaps there's a capital outflow, that definitely would affect local businesses, no matter how liquid they are in every aspect of the business. How is that affecting your members? And you think that that could be perhaps compensated for with certain policies by government?
Well, normally when there is huge influx of your foreign currency, repatriation of foreign currency from your system, it affects the economy, it affects your exchange rate, and it's happening all the time. And if you monitor the trends around end of January to February, March, you see that the cedi normally depreciates because we imported so much for the Christmas goods, and therefore around that time people are changing money.
So every time we see that kind of phenomenon,
it's always happening. And then the investors that are here, they are also at the end of the year repatriating back some of their profits and all that. So it puts a lot of pressure on the city. That is why we have that situation. But then the solution to that is that you should have a lot more indigenous companies who would, put their resources in and let it stay. But then the other aspect, what he mentioned concerning the treasury bill rate and the exchange rate and the interest rate and all that, it's not something that you can just do merely by pressure. Okay, there are situations like AGI and the rest. We've done a lot of advocacy on it. If you go through our business barometer report we issue on quarterly basis, which is read by Bank of Ghana, Ministry of Finance, and all the development partners, we are always highlighting these issues. I can count the number of meetings we've had at different levels on engaging government and hammering home the need to reduce policy rate, because policy rate is a major determinant of interest rate. But then the thing is that it does not just happen artificially. It is anchored by a certain, fundamental economic management issues. If you don't have it right, you can't reduce it, and that's the problem. The interest rate is high because policy rate is always high. Policy rate is used as a check on inflation. If you allow inflation to go skyrocketing, it also has implications. So it's a whole lot of things that must be at play and must work in tandem to create the kind of environment you need to be able to reduce this.
Well, that's where Stephen says.
Yeah, exactly.
So on the part of the association, you may also be getting it entirely wrong if you think that it's only dependent on some of these huge indicators or the macro level before you're also able to thrive.
No,
because your systems...
It's a major factor, and you can't wish it away. I'm not in any...
So you're saying that you could be a string of companies, you have the right systems employed, you have very good balance sheets, but once the macro indicators are skyrocketing or are nosediving, definitely will have an impact on the business.
It's going to affect you. Because if you are borrowing at 30%
and that's realistic,
your counterpart,
and that's realistic.
That's the practicality of the situation. If you are borrowing at 30% and your counterpart also is borrowing at 10%, how can you do business and compete with him?
Yeah.
So
because he borrows somewhere and flies in the capital.
Exactly. And that is why you also have influx of foreign investors, because it's easier. They bring in their money, they make so much money, so much returns, and fly it back. So you need to create conditions to actually encourage local investment and local production. I'm not in any way saying that the local businesses do not have a role to play. They have a major...
My name is Roland.
Roland, sorry. I think I have to correct this thing. Yes, we use monetary policy management as a tool to control inflation. But it can be done to rather aggravate the problem, especially what has been going on in Ghana recently. It depends on the
direction.
It depends on the causes. What is inducing the inflation? If inflation is being induced by cost push, as I said, but not demand pull, it's not like people are buying so much on the market. There's high circulation of money on the market because people are buying, and you increase interest rate, knowing that about 70% of our investors in our country today use their financing. They borrow from the bank. So interest rate is now a very key cost variable in terms of doing business. So if it is from the supplier's end, it's cost of production, and interest rate is also a cost variable, and you increase it, you're rather aggravating the problem. When inflation was below even 15% and they started increasing policy rate, what happened to it? It still went up. So did they achieve their aim? No. And that, we call that strategic drift. When you adopt a strategy to achieve certain goal or to solve a problem, that strategy rather aggravated. And that's why I'm saying that sometimes it depends on how you manage these variables. You understand what I'm saying? It's, for instance, let me You know, Ghana, people were like, oh, 2007-8, we had huge deficit, and everybody was talking against it. Nana was in England, hard talk. He was asked, I think, a couple of times on that same issue. I was shocked that we have a lot of finance, economic gurus in Ghana here, NDC, MPP, from banks, and they sat there and was like, for deficit, one is reached, it's a case. And that is never ever true. Because, really? Of course. It depends.
But you campaigned on it, if you have
what I'm saying is not me campaigning on it. You know me, when it comes to my area, I'm very, very professional. I don't know everything, I can also get it wrong.
Oh, sure.
But intentionally, I don't do that. When you have severe global economic crisis, deficit as economic tool or finance tool is deliberately used in its size to kind of add value to our social capital and stabilize your economy. But the only way you can chastise it is if you don't get the corresponding GDP growth, because you get in a lot of money. In 2007, you remember, even though we had deficit, we grew to middle income status level. And that is what you are doing with the policy rate, the monetary policy. I don't know those who are managing it. They might know far better than I do. But I think they've tried and it's not working.
And you feel that direction of policy rate management is bad?
I can't condemn them, but they can make mistakes.
Okay.
I don't know what they want to achieve. No, sometimes they might know the truth. But because probably they want more money, because by doing that too, you draw money from the system onto government chest. But I want to end with this, that when it comes to treasury bill, boss, it's wrong. So it doesn't have to be like economic days or system. For monetary, I agree with you. But the treasury bill system that we are operating here, it is totally wrong. It's unacceptable. When you have its returns bigger than, it defeats all the models, all the practices all over the world. That if it's going up, it shows that risk in the system is going up. And because risk in the system going up, it means risk in the private sector is going up or higher. So I should get more returns. That is why probably I wouldn't go for treasury and go for private sector, because they have to give me, compensate the risk that I'm going for. So it can never be right, and they have to fight for it.
I think you are preaching to the converted. I mean, for us, AGI, people would wish to see treasury bill rates coming down, because we always complain that when treasury bill rate is high, you are competing with private sector.
But that's why my next question is about, because I know that for the chain of businesses that are AGI or that are related to the businesses that are with AGI, they are very much in small, medium, and then we have the big businesses as well. But then when it will be more of a pyramid when you have to put them together. So at the base, you have a lot more of the small and medium. Now, they need the basic practical incentives at the micro level. How do we make them get there with government policies? I mean, practically. And forget about all the issues about basically what the inflation levels are, because we have to be real. In the next 2 quarters after beginning of 2017, we may not be achieving the level at which we want to be.
Yes, I mean, it's a gradual process. Development is not an event. I mean, it's a process. So we need to have the right signs right from the beginning of the administration, see the indicators, the way they are going, and then free the economy for private sector to actively participate. If you work on it very well and get the fundamentals right, interest rates should drop. And then we talked about the treasury bill rate, and I said he's preaching to the converted. I mean, AGI, our argument has always been that government is indeed competing with the private sector on the monetary front. So if government is able to reduce treasury bill rate because it's not borrowing so much from the system, then the banks will have no choice than to lend to the private sector. The other aspect is also that the bank also borrow. So their cost of capital...
Lend at a higher rate.
Yes, and lend at a higher rate.
Allow you to invest in their securities at a higher return.
Yes.
Maybe that is where...
that's where the deviation is.
No, he's not getting...
No, I'm not arguing at all. For me...
No, he's saying that currently what you are preaching is the same mindset. So.
Exactly. We want to see, ultimately, all the nuances of it, the intricacies of it. You are in government, you have to deal with it. What we want to see is the output or the results. And the results we want to see is that treasury rate comes down, interest rate to private sector comes down, so that the small enterprises you are talking of can actually go to the bank, get loans at reasonable interest rate, and do business. Get the loans for medium to long-term basis to be able to do proper investment. Because the trend we have today is more of buy and sell. If you go to the banks, they only buy products. Sometimes you can even get the goods to the port before you go and borrow. So just clear it, and
even
then
some
the
of
next
your
few days,
businesses,
yeah?
some of your businesses, they even cut corners. Well, they have targets to meet. They want to, from their lines, manufacture certain quantum of products, etc. But they tend to augment or complement those targets with imports because they're coming from very cheap environments, etc.
Well, I wouldn't say no to that.
It's happening.
It's very possible. Businesses, first of all, must survive. Bear in mind that they must survive, and whatever they will do to survive, they will do to survive. Of course, once it's nothing illegal, you can't prevent them. However, you can create conditions such that they will rather concentrate on their core business and grow it. And industrialists know this, that if I'm importing to supplement what I'm producing, I'm not even helping myself. In the long run, others will import even more and compete me out. So what I would like to do is to consolidate what I'm doing. If it's production, I have one production plant, can I expand it and employ more people and create more wealth and get stronger holding in the... So it all depends on how the whole economic environment is. If it's good enough, I will not import. So I wouldn't say that's purely on economic principles.
But sometimes you have to also diversify. It's good what you're saying, I agree, so they have total control over it. But because of the possibility of risk that will be confronting you, sometimes when you diversify, the factors that will collapse one
What
business.
are you diversifying? Is it the business or you create other small business units?
No, businesses that are probably not having
subsidiaries.
Positive correlation with what you have. Probably I'm into producing books, which needs energy big time. Energy is a major factor. But probably there could be another
line of business.
Line of business that energy might not be very prominent. Of course, I will need it. If I'm into those areas, maybe for the past 5 years that the energy situation...
So you're saying if you're into a line of business in which you need a lot more energy, perhaps you can decide to do something like maybe packaging.
You spread your risk by diversifying.
But it's not as easy as today, because even if you're undertaking business in a certain line or sector, you have to consolidate. Now, if the external factors of which you are not in control of, the macro indicators are not good enough, and we know basically what the business are suffering from, its cost of credit is very high, the cost of doing business is also high because they have to buy energy at very high levels, and so it doesn't make them competitive. It also has an effect on what their overheads will be. So at the end of the day...
Roland, is the reason I'm saying that diversification helps a lot. Sometimes even for your own life. Let me tell you something. When we lost power, I was the National Deputy Coordinator for National Engineers.
Yes, I know.
I was asked to resign. I'm sure you were very close to me. And when I resigned, I had this small company. I was doing this consultancy stuff.
You had this financial...
Yeah, exactly. Research, I was doing it. But then quickly, I veered into farming as well. Now I have about 40 acre land of palm. I'm going to start processing this year. If worst comes to worst, now every year I know I have a chunk of money from my farms, which politics cannot affect it. But you understand, that's all. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying that sometimes sticking to what you have, as he said, to gain experience, I agree perfectly, but it's very risky because some set of factors can collapse that thing beyond your strength. Not that you are not smart, as you are saying, especially macroeconomic risk factors. They don't have control. You cannot do anything about it. But because you have AB2 businesses not linked or not correlated, one's performance does not affect the other one. Sometimes it helps you to withstand, the risk factors that are confronting you. It's just an advice.
I see that you keep smiling all the time. It's just that you're saying he's not being practical.
No, it's very practical.
There's no yes and no.
Or he's not being realistic.
Well, I think if he says he's going into palm production and all that, which is good. I think that what he's saying, there's no yes or no answer to this. Reason being that it depends on the practical and particular situation of the enterprise in question. Yeah. In some instances, you can't just say that you are diversifying and for the sake of diversification, you move resources from your core business and start going into other business. Because there have been several instances where the core business that is feeding the other one collapses. So you need to be very careful. This is not to say that if you are into business and there are other opportunities that comes around, you shouldn't take advantage of it. And indeed, they are doing it. That's why now these days you hear this one group of companies, a Farua group of companies, a certain group of companies. So it means that they are doing other things. So that's already happening. But I would not advise that if you haven't really examined your business operations very well, know your plans very well, and then you start diversifying in the name of diversification, you collapse the business.
But let's talk about sometimes some of the good things. We know that even some of the big players in the industry, which are very much local, they are local companies, seem to be doing so well, expanding into the sub-region and doing other things. Perhaps what are they doing right that those down the chain can also be learning?
Oh, I think it boils down to
within even the difficulties that
yes. I mean, we always acknowledge it. One, the entrepreneur behind the business counts a lot. That's why I was agreeing with him that if you have efficient management system, if the entrepreneur, the person behind it is solid, it contributes to higher chances of the business succeeding, because he is able to have that foresight and know that this environment is tough in this area, so let me go into this area. Even the products I'm producing, let me add this to this, and then it will reduce cost this way. So the entrepreneur is a major factor. But then, apart from the entrepreneur, it's also the product itself. Not all products are that exportable in nature. Some products are by nature very readily available for exports because the export market is there. So if you're into such products, then you have an opportunity. Some products, especially in the sub-region, are in good demand. And I mean, AGI, we've helped, together with the Export Promotion Council in the past, created a lot of market in the sub-region. So those companies who took advantage of it, those into aluminium, plastics, and all that, hitherto plastics was not produced in that much volume in Ghana. Today, it's doing well because even in the sub-region, Ghanaian plastics are highly needed. If you take the pharmaceutical sector, we've had significant growth in the pharmaceutical industry. So the nature of the product counts, and then the entrepreneur also counts, so that regardless of the environment, you'll be able to do solid business. And then also, those who also make use of professional service. I think that has been emphasized, and I think it is important.
And he has.
And he has. And I agree that you need to make use of professional service, just except that it has to be at some point in your business path. It can't start right from the beginning. But when you make use of professional service, it can bring so much value. Of course, it depends on which professional you use, because if you are doing serious negotiations for finance, even offshore financing and all that, you can actually do it. And businesses that are serious, that the entrepreneurs are good and make use of this profession, they can make all these amends in the course of their business.
But do you know sometimes...
We have to wrap our conversation, but I know you want to add something.
Do you know even sometimes when they employ the services of so-called professionals and even advise them, they don't take. Sometimes they even give you huge money to develop system structures, something that can help them run their businesses. It might not be 100% effective, and they know it's good. If you tell maybe the owner that, oh, please, separate ownership from control, pay yourself, allow systems to work for your own company. Hey, Roland, maybe they'll try like first 2 months, and they just go against it. So all that I'm saying is that, yes, everything he's saying, I'm saying, it looks like we agree with each other, but finally, I would like to tell them.
But Stephen, don't overgeneralize these things, because there are people who are go see all the companies. Papa, they have their books intact. They do all these things.
Papa, once
agreeing that this thing exists, don't overgeneralize it and think it is so with everybody.
The point is that for the past 7 years, it's ethical. You can't mention companies on TV. I've worked with a lot of companies, and trust me, I can say about 80% of those you work for. Do you know Ghana here?
Even those that claim that they are top
Roland,
companies. Even those that claim they are top companies. Medium.
I haven't really worked for maybe very top company. I wouldn't say.
No, I mean local Ghanaian company, but top.
I don't know what you describe, but some of them they have huge capitals.
Okay.
You understand? Do you know even some companies when they are going for grant? I can tell you Ghana here. Then that they will go and look for somebody, prepare financial statement. They will coerce the auditors to stamp it for them. These are real. I'm not saying I won't mention names, but it's not helping us, because even day-to-day entry of our data, daily entries, we don't do. You understand what I'm saying? But in every company, every person that goes out or comes in has to be recorded, because based on that you build your financial statement. So all that I'm saying, I'm not saying they are not doing well. They are doing so much well. But I'm saying that yes, governments fail them, I agree. They themselves too should introduce new paradigm shifts, something that will let them be professional and competitive.
And we have to.
It doesn't mean all of them.
We have to wrap up our discussion. Seth, how optimistic are you for all the things that you've heard over the last 6 months? And now that we've come to the end or the climax, we're beginning a new financial year, and we're hoping that things will be better. How optimistic are you?
No, I think for businesses, we are always optimistic. And if you look at our business barometer report, the major driver of the indicator level is how you feel about the business environment currently and what your expectation is. So the expectation must be good. Otherwise, then you just have to wind up. So we are expectant and we have good expectations. I think that the practical thing will be what will happen on the ground. At the end of the day, are we going to see the kind of improvement we are all expecting? And if the signs are good, we will see it. So I would say businesses are a bit, and we are always ready to work with the government in power to make sure that what we would like to see is more of engagement, constant engagement, so that you understand us better, we understand you better, and then we think through the problems together and then create the conditions for us. So I think that one, and if that works, I'm sure we should be able to see improvement.
And Stephen, it's not gainsaying that businesses and the private sector love working with an MPP-led government.
Because I think we are capitalists. The socialists they adopt contractionary fiscal policies as their economic policy directions. They should have been engaging, or they should have engaged on pro-poor policies, so that centrally they take part. We are not supposed to do that. We are supposed to adopt, as I said, expansionary, where we allow the private sector to grow. So most of our policies and decisions favor them. So I think they will be more comfortable with us. It doesn't mean we are perfect, or maybe socialists such as NDC never did anything good for them. No. But the fact is that all businessmen would love to have their taxes being reduced, would love to have cheaper cost of credit, would love to have government support. You understand what I'm saying? So that they can increase their profit or margins and expand. So I think they'll be more comfortable with us. And as he said, one good thing that he said is we should work closely with them so that we understand them, they understand us, because we are partners to move this country forward. And I can assure him that will be done.
Thank you very much. And Stephen Amwa is with the MPP, was with the communication team throughout the campaign period. And he's also an expert in finance in his own right. And we also have had in the studio the chief executive for AGI, that is the Association of Ghana Industries, and Seth Chum Akwabwa has also been here. Thanks for joining me, gentlemen. But we also know we have to continue the discussions. We would have an international relations expert, and we would want to speak to them on the subject of what's happening in the Gambia. We know that a delegation from the Economic Community for West African States, ECOWAS, that's the sub-regional grouping in West Africa, has been to the Gambia to meet the president, Yahya Jammeh. Just a week or two ago, he conceded to an election defeat. But over the last 2 days, the signs out of that country have not been so good. So we would want to look at that. We'll wrap up the whole show with a lot more entertainment as well, but please make sure you stay glued to your sets. We're taking a break. We'll be right back.